My name is April Kraft Dooley, and I am a research associate with the AOC, and we are going to kick off Just Data January with an overview presentation on a drop-off analysis. So what is it? It's an implementation strategy that uses data to visualize and quantify system performance, inefficiencies, and possible bottlenecks. They are characterized by a series of sequential and conditional steps that yield a desired outcome. So moving from one part of a process or program to the next. And the drop-off occurs because between these steps, participants drop off or leave the program. The process. So the first step is gathering data for each of the points in the system that would be considered a step or a stage, disaggregating that data by race, ethnicity, gender, and even things like services provided can be done. Once data is collected, there is a guided team discussion, and here's where your team dives deep and gives a narrative to the numbers. The team asks, why are we losing people at these different stages? What additional information do we need? Then the team decides on changes that can help reduce drop-off. You make a plan for that change, including setting goals and timelines. Then you implement the change and repeat the drop-off process. So what does that do for dependency? Here is a visual. Dependency is a sequential process. We start with calls to the hotline, then investigations, then opening the case, then petitions are filed, and then they enter the program. With FTC, we are concerned with substance use disorder, and for ECCs, we are concerned with the age of the kiddos, and with ICWA, we are concerned with Native American heritage. From there, we get who is eligible for these programs, how many are entering, how many are staying, and how many are completing the program. And this isn't set in stone. You may in your county have an additional step or stage between these listing here where your team want the numbers. For example, maybe between referred and admitted, there's a screening process that you would like the numbers for. Or maybe in your county you have a specific service you want to look at. Who is accepting that service? Why or why not? Perhaps in your county there are multiple steps within the referral process that you want to look at. So it is important for your team, while collecting the data, to make sure you are gathering information for all the stages of the process. So when looking at the drop-off, the first part of the analysis is really looking at the front end of the system. What is happening to families when they first enter the system? For this part of the analysis, you may want to engage with your local child welfare office and bring them into the discussion. It doesn't mean your court will be able to make changes at the front end because that is outside your domain, but it is a good plan to know where your families have been in the process and where there are missed opportunities to engage with families early. The second half of the drop-off analysis is looking at families that are eligible for our programs and what is happening to them through the process. This can be further broken down into enrollment and treatment. For the first part of our drop-off analysis, we are really going to focus on the enrollment section. We will get the numbers from earlier stages and the treatment stages, but our deep dive will mostly concern with why we are losing participants around the stages in enrollment and why we are losing certain people at these stages. Enrollment is a concern in all of these programs, so it makes sense to start there. Why? Before I go to the next slide and show you an example of how the enrollment data looks using Washington statewide numbers, I want you to keep the question why in your mind and maybe make a note every time you think why in your head, because that is what these analyses are supposed to do, thinking about your own county when asking why. Let's take a look at two of our programs, family treatment courts and early childhood courts. The drop-off here is pretty easy to explain. There are some counties that do not have an FTC or an ECC, so not everyone is eligible straight away. But there may be other things to think about. What is the eligibility requirements in your county? Who decided on them? Who is determining if the family fits those requirements? The drops-off here are a little harder to figure out and one that would need a deep dive together. Who is referring the families? How are the families notified that they are eligible? How and by whom is the program explained to them? What is your screening process? Who is doing it? How are we interacting with the parents? When a parent doesn't want to do the program, are we finding out why? What are your county's eligibility requirements and how were they determined? Who is determining if a family is eligible for FTC or ECC? Is every family eligible being referred? Why are some families choosing to enter therapeutic court and others saying no? Once in, why are some families successful and others not? Services, transportation, housing. What can we do to increase the enrollment? Understanding why we are losing people at each step and what goes on at each step will help us answer that. So we need to ask some tough questions and find actionable solutions. Another thing that should be pointed out is data accuracy. It is possible that the drop-off isn't actually people, but the numbers themselves. First and foremost, sites need to talk about their data collection and the accuracy of the data. Even if the number of children, like here it says 32 and 4, is off because some cases weren't entered correctly, it is not going to be off by hundreds, and typically, even when the data is rough, we can still see things like trends. Is the gap between eligible and enrolled going up, going down, staying the same, even if the numbers aren't exactly what they should be? So while yes, we want our data to be as accurate as possible, and deep diving may require looking at individual cases as a team and asking what happened to their enrollment, it is important to note that getting stuck on accuracy alone isn't going to address the gap, and that saying this data isn't right is not enough. Your team may need to spend some time addressing the issues of data accuracy and collection. Perhaps you are not collecting data at a significant stage, and that is okay. Remember, we can also look at these numbers by different indicators, like race. When presenting data and discussing the tables and charts in the various meetings that I go to, and I say that we are predominantly serving white families, I get asked two questions. One, is it representative of the families coming in? And two, why are we providing services to more white families? What is happening to our families of color? Well, a drop-off analysis is something that can aid our sites in answering these questions because we can include those indicators. Not just the number and percentage of those completing treatment, but the number and percentage of those completing treatment by race and ethnicity, or gender, or any indicator that we think might need to be addressed. How are drop-off analyses useful? It can be used for ongoing data monitoring. You can walk through your system. You have 100 court filings, 25 had SUDs. Is that accurate? Is your data lining up with what is actually happening in the court? Is it being recorded properly? Using strategic data collection will help the courts choose management strategies that are most effective. And examples, New York determined they needed a universal screening tool. Places weren't screening the same, and that led to disparities. Another location learned that parents opted out because they didn't like how many strangers were visiting their home in the program. So the program implemented sending a text message with a picture and a biography of the workers before they came to the home so that parents would at least know the face of the person coming. In Clark County, we know that parents get attached to their social worker, and when they join the program, they have to switch social workers. Something they're doing in Clark is looking at ways to address that transition. All of this to say the analysis itself will not improve the performance of the programs unless it is paired with effective improvement strategies. So your analysis will include additional discussion components to make change, including changes to address disparities. That leads us to Just Data January. Congratulations! You are already working on the Just Data January plan. This presentation is the first step to understanding the overall picture of what is to come. Included in this first lesson are walkthrough videos on where to find the main numbers for the analysis. Where is this data? What additional data might you need to look for? The next lesson will include how to present the data from the previous step to the team members doing the analysis. Ideally, the team member should help collect parts of the data that they are responsible for, and then whomever is running the group should compile the data and make some easy-to-read reports. Week 2 of Just Data January will help you with that process. The third week, we will talk about the water. What is it and how it can help you in this analysis? The fourth topic will be about having hard conversations about difficult topics with your team. If you do the water beforehand, the report could be a great place to start those conversations. And the fourth week will help Facilitators navigate these conversations. The fifth week will be about implementing change. We will revisit previous information presented on change management. We will talk about goals, timelines, and how to measure impact of change. Every site is going to be at different places with their data and their availability to do this analysis. You should not expect to finish your drop-off analysis in January if you've never done one before. Everyone should set a long-term goal to have some plan implemented in at least the first quarter. Lastly, I will have office hours each week tied to the lessons. Even if your team is not ready for each step, but you want to prepare questions, please feel free to do so and come to those office hours. If your team works on a lesson at a later date, after just that of January and the office hours are over, don't fret. I can always set up a time to meet individually with sites to help. I look forward to helping you with this process.